All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Coaches Conference call here for January 7, 2018. I'm glad you're all here. We're going to go through some things, what to expect, how to do some planning as we go forward. We will, as we go through, just let me know if you have questions, pop into the group chat, and we'll do our best to address those questions as we move forward. So you should all be muted. So you will need to be able to chat there as you answer questions. So if you can't hear me, please let me know. I'm going to assume that everybody can. Seems like my microphone is working correctly and everything's going all right here. So if you have difficulty hearing, please pop in into the chat and let me know. All right, I want to just cover a few things. There's a poll up. It looks like most of you are rookie coaches, which is great. A few veteran coaches coming in here as well. We're really excited to have all of you as part of the Adventist Robotics League. And as I'm sure you are all well aware, we're coming down to crunch time and getting things done for the tournaments, which are starting to happen in the next 7 to 10 weeks or so, is when most of the 7 to 12 weeks or so is when the next tournaments are coming in. So this is the time when all the work really starts happening. And it's like, okay, we've got our Christmas programs out of the way, all the other things. Now we've got to really focus on this and make this happen. So I'll share a few things that I've done with our teams as we're doing this. We have a number of teams here at Sacramento Adventist Academy. We're actually doing robotics for everybody in grades 5 through 8. Everybody's participating. So it's going to be an interesting experience to get everybody operating and running. And we're going to have different levels within that, and different teams operate in different ways, and different kids have different motivations or lack of motivation sometimes for getting it done. The cool thing about this is they'll all learn and they'll all grow as they go through this. So hopefully it'll be we want it to be a positive experience for everybody as they go through. I will say some of the things that that we're going to talk about here, and we talk about when it comes to tournaments, and we'll talk about this as well, are general practices. There may be some variations that you'll see at the different tournaments that you go to. So, so let me go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen right now with you, and we're going to go through a couple things here. So let me jump to this. All right. Let's first of all talk about resources and some of the different things that are available. Make sure everybody is aware of what those are as we go through here. Hold on just a second. Let me make sure I've got what I need up here so I can see the chat. All right, I'm not actually seeing the chat here, so I'll jump back into it. Let me just check here. That's what I need. Okay, I want to make sure my chat window is open so I can see that. All right, as we go through, first of all, the core place for all of your resources is at the firstinspires.org website, and in the challenge and season. And I'll just jump through and you'll be able to see this. Here on the right, hydrodynamics challenge and materials. This is the key to everything that you're going to be doing. There's been a lot of updates. FIRST is continuing to improve and enhance the programs every year. Some of the material that's available here for you is the coach's handbook. This guides you through what to expect as a coach and some of the key things there. Well worth reading that. Make sure you take time for that. The hydrodynamics challenge guide here then is one of the most important pieces, in fact, the most important document that you'll have available to you. I would encourage you to print this out for your team members, have it available. We've printed it in booklet form. You can print it in different ways as you go through. But this has all the different aspects of the challenge, and this is the rule book in a sense. Basically, this includes everything that has to be done. And this is very, very important document as you go through. So some of the things we'll highlight in here. The first part, there's 3 main sections. The first is core values. So make sure that you take time every day with your kids to talk through the core values and have them make sure they understand what these are. They're basic human being kind of things, but also very much in line with our Christian values in our Adventist schools. And I think there'll be a great enhancement to your program. Make sure you're focusing on this. At the tournament, you will be expected to have a core values poster. This poster here, the description of what it is right here. It walks you through how you need to create this. Now, what I'm going to be doing is I'm working with my teams. We're talking about what should be on the core values poster. We're going to talk about the core values poster. And then in the last 2 or 3 weeks before the tournament is when we'll actually create the core values poster. Because some of the things they need to put on there are things that they still haven't yet experienced as they've worked through this. So make sure you look at this. Here's an example of what it should include, the basic format of this core values poster, how big it should be, and what it should look like. So this is, when you go before the judging panel for core values, this is going to be a very important piece of document that you will use to have that discussion with the judges. So make sure you take a look at that and make sure you have that developed for you. The next section is the project. The project this year basically is this right here. Your team's challenge this season will be to improve the way people find, transport, use, or dispose of water. So they give examples, and then they're going to walk you through step by step what they need to be able to do. Identify the problem, design a solution, share it with others. It's very important if you want to be eligible for the top awards in the competition that you actually take your team and share that with other people. This can be done in a variety of ways, but it's very important that you actually do this part of it here and you do the share as you go through. And the rubrics, for those of you that are veteran coaches, please note that the rubric for the project is new this year. It's a brand new rubric, so if what you've used before, if you're used to that, make sure you go back and take a look at that and make sure you're familiar with it. We'll come back to the rubrics in just a little bit here. Glossary of terms as we go through here, some video resources, things like that can do as we go through. Asking a professional how to network with people. That's a very important skill for them to know. So a lot of great material there. Then the final section of it is the actual robot game. This has a number of different sections to it. The first one is the rules. Beginning last year, they've greatly reduced the number of rules, which is a really, really good thing. It was getting a little complex for this age level, and they've modified it. So if you are a veteran coach, every year make sure you take a look at what these are, because there are changes in them every year. And especially last year, there were significant changes, so make sure that you're aware of what those changes are and you take a look at those. Specifically, if you're a veteran coach, make sure you're aware of the changes dealing with what happens to items and your robot when they enter and leave base. That's very, very important. So the definition of in and what base is completely in or partly in is very important. But these rules here are important, and then what happens when something has lost contact if it's coming in and leaving base. Those are very, very important parts that you need to do. Summarizing the rules as far as what equipment you can use. Read this, of course, in detail. Basically, there's limitations on the electronic parts you can use. However, you can use any kind of almost any unmodified Lego piece, with a few exceptions beyond that. So make sure you take a look at what those are. This area right here, rule R14, interrupting. This is very, very important to know how this happens and what this is. So interrupting and stranding. Those two things, this is significantly different than what it used to be a couple years ago. So make sure that you're paying attention to that and noticing that. And even if you're a rookie coach, this is really important because it will impact the game and how that works. So that's the basic rules. Then we have the missions. The missions are what they say they are right here. So take it literally. If it doesn't say you can't, that means you can. Typically, it's a 2.5-minute match, and you have the condition of the field at the end of the match is what you have there. So make sure that you are taking a look at all of those and knowing what they are. It is impossible to get a perfect score. It's a very much involved challenge each year, and they do their best to make sure because it's not about getting a perfect score. It's about overcoming challenges and solving problems. So your teams will have to make priorities on what they do. Keep in mind, if you're a rookie coach, when you get your robot kit, there'll be a little booklet in that kit, which will have instructions to build a robot. That is probably not the best robot to build for your team. So we'll talk a little bit about some resources and ideas for building robots there as we go forward as well. So these are the different missions. Look at them very carefully as you go through. Your field, if you have built it according to specification, should be identical to the field that's there. The table is a 4x8 foot table with walls around the outside edge. Those walls can either be 2x3s or 2x4s. So the heights might vary. So just make sure that you plan on that as you're doing that. I know at our competition, and I believe at the championship, we'll be using 2x3 sides of the table for 2x3s on the side. But I know some of the qualifying tournaments that have been around a while still have the older 2x4 inch, the 4-inch, which is 2x4 is basically 3.5 inches versus 2.5 inches high for the sides of the table. So you need to be able to adjust and program for any of those as we go along. Give me just a second. So, all right. The last thing on here is a robot design executive summary. Don't miss this part. This is a document that you will give to the robot design judges that basically summarizes what you did to program and work with the robot. So don't forget this part of it as well. This is another thing that you need to develop. It's something you'll develop later on as in the season, but you need to be planning for it as you go through and anticipating that, and having your kids take notes as you go through that. All right, any questions over this part of what we've talked about? Go ahead and pop in with any questions there you have. So far, the chat is empty. Just want to make sure we have a chance for everybody to answer a question, ask questions as we go along. All right, so hopefully everybody's taking a look at that. We'll jump back here. The next document that's here is very important is the challenge updates. So throughout the course of the season, they get asked questions, and first makes determinations based on that, on some of the questions. And when they make a ruling, they will post it here. So they try not to make a ruling unless it's really necessary, but there's a number of different updates here that you can see. So these updates override anything else in the challenge document. All right, so make sure that you pay attention to this as well. There's a number of them here, and make sure you look at these. Some are dealing with a project. The first ones here deal with a project and clarifications on that. Then they deal with the robot game updates. So these are rules. This is what matters as we go forward here. All right. So make sure you look at that. Field setup guide. These are your mission model building instructions. Your field setup guide, how to get it field set up correctly. Pay careful attention to that because you want your field to match exactly how it works through there. On the day of the tournament, they will be using a scoring sheet, something similar to this, and your team will be asked to put their initials down here. Now, just one of your team members will put their initials at the end to say, yes, this is when the referees will go over them and say, is this the way it actually looks? Then this sheet is handed to the scorekeeper, the data is put into a computer, and the computer does the calculations on the scoring. because that can be a little complicated because of some of the conditions and such. So you don't have to worry about people adding up the scores. The biggest thing your team needs to make sure, and this is not you as a coach, but this needs to be one of your team members, make sure that they have reviewed this is at the end and they agree that that's the way it is. Because once that's done, then the scoring is final, and usually there's really no appeal after that for most of that. So all right, so those are some of the documents that are available there. Very, very important documents. I will share with you, and I'll send this out as well. I came across this. I have to say I didn't design it, but I came across it, and you can use something like this with your teams. As I'm working with the teams, I want to make sure everybody has a role and a responsibility as they go through. And so this can be a useful tool to help your kids have responsibility. So and this, there's no rule or rocket science to this as far as how this goes. I'm going to put you guys on, may need to put you on pause just a second. I just had some people walk in here. So, hello. I'm going to go ahead and keep going. If they have a question, I might jump away here. So. This room got redone, or was redone 5 years ago. This used to be an art room back in 2012. So these you don't have to worry about. You may come up with some modifications in this. These are just some ideas. This isn't any rule that says you have to do it this way, but this is one way to organize your team as we go through here. So, and I'll send this out to you, everybody. This is a Word document. I'll send it out to everybody for you so you can have that available to you. All right. Okay, a couple other things as we go through here. We've talked about this, the challenge guide. Let me share with you a website that I found very useful. EV3 Lessons. This is done by a team, a couple brothers, and I'm sure they have some adult help, but it's a great resource for different ideas of how to build a robot, how to do different things. And it's grown over the last several years to be just a tremendous resource. Everything from lessons to robot designs. They got some great calculation tools here. If you want to know a wheel converter, if you want to know what your wheels are, some calculations and such as far as how many degrees to move forward for and how far it goes, and some things like that. Some great resources here. So definitely take a look at this, ev3lessons.com. Great resource available to you as coaches. Not done by FIRST, but as far as building the robots and developing your team, not as much about rules and that kind of stuff and strategy, but just how to build your team as you go forward. So that's a great resource. Another good resource from FIRST, if you're not aware of it, is if you come to community and under educators, FIRST actually has, they have curriculum available for FIRST LEGO League called First Steps Curriculum. So that's something I would definitely sign up for. You click on this and fill out this form and it will email you how to connect to it. It's in Schoology. And if you need help getting connected to it, they have a team of people that can help you be connected in there. So take a look at that and make sure that you're connected to that if you aren't, because it will actually walk you through an 8 to 12-week program of working with your kids from a curriculum viewpoint as we go through. Of course, another great resource is YouTube. And I encourage my kids to look at YouTube for ideas. They're not going to be able to copy just anything that's out there, but it surely helps them expand what the possibilities are in creative ways for being able to do that. A lot of the very complex robots, they're not going to be able to go and say, oh, I'm going to copy that word, brick by brick, but they can definitely look at that and get ideas for what needs to happen there. So I encourage you to do that. All right, any questions about curriculum and the resources we've covered here? Brandon, I'll come back to your question. I've got it here as far as the date of the competition. All right, as far as I will jump in and ask this question about the dates of the competition. Under Adventist Robotics League or AdventistRobotics.net, there is a link called Calendar. And this is where all the dates of the competitions are listed. And we're working on getting some of these dates out several years so that we can know when they're going to be and we can anticipate them. So take a look at that. But that doesn't register you for the event. In order to register for the event, you need to come to First Inspires and log in. And once you are logged in, you can go to My Teams, and then here is where you can actually register your team for an event. You need to make sure in order to register for the event, you must have 2 screen coaches. It's possible that you can have a principal or somebody else who's not actively involved in the team on a regular basis be involved there. But then you can actually come here and view the events, and you can search for an event and register for the event. So it's very important that you do that. You can see that this team is signed up for the Northern California ARL Challenge on March 8th. So, and this will tell you whether you're confirmed and that kind of thing in there. So just be aware of that and make sure that you are actually signed up for that. But you can also view that the events are listed in here. Let's see what this looks like from this event. So I can hit find an event, and it will find events in the, if you don't see Adventist Robotics League tournaments here, you need to actually let me know, because most likely then you're not signed up correctly, or you're not in the Adventist Robotics League, and you may be in a regular challenge. So you can communicate with me on that. So just be aware of that, and make sure that you're signed up and registered for an event here. So when we are working, for those of you on the East Coast, we are working to add a challenge in the Mid-Atlantic region back in for next year. For those of you in that region, that will help. So we know we don't have one there. Tennessee and Florida are the only 2 on the East Coast, but we're working on adding another one back in. So stay tuned for that coming up in the future. So we've got good plans headed that direction, and pretty optimistic that's going to take place. All right. So the other thing that we need to make sure, as far as the day of the tournament and preparing for the tournament goes, let me jump back to make sure that you're aware of the judging rubrics. The rubrics the judges will use are available to everybody. So there's no secret about the judging rubrics. Let me see if I can find them. Okay, here we go. Okay, I'm sorry, that's not it either. First LEGO League. Sorry, I didn't have this up. Should have been on the, oops, challenge and season page I was at before. I didn't see it as I went through there. All right, let me double check on that, and I'll get it back to you. But the rubrics are available, and I don't see them here. In fact, here's also a link to First Steps, the curriculum available if you want that. Okay, I'm going to have to double check on this. Judging rubrics. Let's try this again. Oh, maybe right here. All right, click on that over there. I was there. So these are the rubrics the judges are going to use. I would print these out for your team members and go through them. Make sure that they're aware of what they are. There's no secret to these. The better you do with these different rubrics, and as we've said before, this project rubric is new this year, so it's completely redone. So make sure that you pay attention to that if you're a veteran coach. This is very different. But the kids can know exactly what it is they need to do, and make sure that each of these areas are addressed as you're going through and as you're preparing your kids for that. So, you know, when you work with, for example, when you're working on your robot design, make sure that they're paying attention to this and they're thinking this through. When they do their robot design executive summary, make sure each of these areas are answered and addressed as they go through. Don't leave the judges guessing as far as what happens here, but have everything in your documents. When you deal with core values, make sure that everything is addressed on this rubric as you're working with the core values for the judges, so they know what you have as you're coming through there, and on your core values poster. So make sure that you pay attention to that. Make sure your kids have that. There's no need to guess and to wonder what's happening with this. So that's a very important document to have and to have for your kids. I would definitely print this out for your kids, have them go over it with them, work with them on that as they go through there. All right, and I just lost my chat window again. Hold on just a second. Let me see if I get this back. All right. Oh, I've lost the screen. Hold on. Something happened here. Sorry about this. I'm not sure what happened in the screen sharing. Give me just a sec here again. Pull this back up. Okay, I think we're back in. Yep, we've got it. Yeah, thanks for the links and that kind of thing there. Appreciate you guys sharing that as we go along there. So, all right. Any other questions? Let me just make sure. I think we've gotten any questions that have come through here. All right. So, as you're preparing for it, and we will address this again in future conference calls. What do you expect the day of the tournament as you come in? One of the things that you need to have ready for yourself as you go through is you need to have one that's very, very important, and this is something that rookie teams miss, is you must have consent and release forms for each of your students. This is consent and release forms from FIRST, and this is very different than the consent form that you need for your field trip. It is absolutely different than that. So whatever your school requires for your trip, that's one thing. This is for the tournament itself and for FIRST as we go through. So make sure you have that consent and release form taken care of. When you go into your dashboard, the parents can actually sign up, and you can send invitations to them so they can sign up and do it electronically. That is the preferred method to do that. And you can actually invite them. You can invite for your team. Let's see. You can invite youth members into it, and you can approve them in here, and they can do that. So the deadline for this is it just has to be done before you show up for the tournament. When you show up for the tournament, everybody has to have this. So you can work with this. That's up to you anytime in between that. I would encourage you to get this done earlier rather than later. So this team doesn't have really anybody in it right now. I can show you a different team, one of our first tech challenge team. All right, let it reload here. Capitals Engineering. So here's the youth team members. And so you can see these are the accepted ones here. There's also, if you have other mentors or adults helping out, it's good to have them in here as well, but that's not as important. I have people who are associated with the team who are in here. But these are the team members, and you can see they have to have this green consent and releases on record. That's important there. There is a paper document you can use as well if you need to, but it's great. It's really good to have them involved in here because then they actually track their participation. So this individual here has not done his consent and release form, and so we had a tournament, and we weren't able to. We were not allowed. He was not allowed to go to the tournament because he did not have his consent and release form done. So because we get there, they're going to say, sorry, this isn't there, and he won't be able to participate. So it's very important. Then once you have this, let me come back up to the top. There's a printable roster here. And what's nice about this is you can print this roster out and then print the whole thing out, and that's all you have to take with you is that printed roster. And just make sure everybody has a check mark beside it as they go through. So here, this person's not, and this is the one that's not accepted. So he has a little X there. So print that out, bring that with you, and you don't have to bring a huge stack of papers with you. The alternative is to do the paper form and to work with that. Anybody that's handwritten, and you can have a combination. So if you have this roster here, and sorry, that's not the right place, but if you printed out the roster, you're welcome to handwrite in people. But anybody who's handwritten in, you must have a consent and release document actually printed out and signed for that individual. So, and that's available on FIRST website, and we can get that to you if you need to as well. So that's important as you do it. Once again, it just needs to be at the day of the tournament. That is for participation in the tournament. So up until that point, you can work with it. But like I say, I would work on this right away, especially if you choose to go the electronic route. Sometimes you need to work with the parents that are a little less tech savvy and get them in there, and it gives you time to get that done. Once again, this is completely separate from any permission slips or anything like that your teams need from your school, as far as your students are required to have for your school for participating in the trip and tournament and that kind of thing. That's a separate kind of document. So when you get in, come to the tournament, you're going to register. You'll turn in that information. You'll get either name tags or buttons, depending on the tournament and what they are, and you'll be assigned an area in the pits. When you think of pits, think of NASCAR pits. The pits is an area where your team will have to work. It'll be their base for the day. It may be in the same room as where the competition takes place. It could be in a separate room, just depending on the venue and what's available. It could even be in a separate building. And the competition could happen, for example, here at our competition, we have our pits area in our library, and then we have the competition actually in the gym, which is just right across the way from there. So the students move back and forth in between there. There will be practice tables available for you, so you don't have to bring your own practice tables. I know there's some teams that do. The challenge with that is they're not easy to transport, and you definitely need the walls and all that kind of thing as you go through. But there will be practice tables there. As you work with those practice tables that will be in the pit areas, make sure that you don't dominate those tables. Don't take your computer there to do programming. Go test your robot and then move out of the way so other teams can use those practice tables as they come through. So that's very important as you go through. And make sure the practice tables are working correctly. Then during the morning, your teams will go before 3 different judging panels. You will be judged on your core values. And when you go into the judging panels, keep in mind, for those of you, this is for veteran coaches, this is nothing new, but for rookie coaches, many tournaments, it's up to the tournament director as far as who can go in the room with there. So if you if you haven't been, in our tournaments, I allow one coach, one adult to go into the room with them. I know in First Tech Challenge and a lot of places, they do not allow any coaches, any adults to go in with them. I allow one in, partly because I want you as a coach to learn and grow. That's my philosophy, and to see how the kids react. However, please understand that when you're in there, you should not be interacting with the kids at all. In fact, you should sit in a place, you'll be sitting in a place where you are behind your team and you're just there as an observer. Any interaction with your team will be considered a reason for disqualification. So make sure that you're not doing that. Okay, just that's very important. I'm going to drop my screen share here and pop back to my screen. So yeah, make sure that you're not doing that. Make sure that you are just there as an observer. That's very, very important. So you're going to go in before the core values post. You're going to take your core, but the kids will take the core values poster in. They'll talk to the judges. They have 10 minutes with each one of these judging panels. So it's not a lot of time. So part of this is you need to work with your kids on how to effectively communicate in that 10 minutes. And how to do that. And this is where your core values poster and any documents you leave with them are very useful and very important as they go through. So core values is one. They will do the project. In the project, they'll have a 5-minute presentation. Remember, you need to bring everything with you. Some tournaments have AV capabilities. Some do not have AV capabilities. So unless your tournament is expecting to have some kind of AV, don't plan on any AV. And really, it's better to have the kids do a skit or some kind of interactive presentation than it is to have some kind of PowerPoint on there. And you really don't want them to do a video. That's not something the judges look favorably on as some kind of canned video that's pre-done. They want to interact and see the kids actually doing something. So I wouldn't rely on any media, but if you bring in props for your presentation for your judges, whatever you do, that 10 minutes, if it takes you 5 minutes to set up, you've used up your whole 5 minutes. So you need to be able to come in, get set up right away, and go right into your presentation. As a coach, you cannot help them with any of the setup. Do not help them with any of that. It needs to be all on the kids. They need to be independent. Remember, if you're in there you are there only as an observer in that role only. Everything is on the kids and how they've done. They will interact with them. If the judges see you interacting with them, that's a reason for disqualification in that area. So please take that seriously as you go through it. I'm sure you will. All right, let me just jump back here. All right, so you'll go before the 3 different judging panels. The final one then is the robot design judging, which they're going to look at the programming. It's good to have a printout of your programs. They will probably ask them to run a mission. There'll be a table in there, and they'll run a mission. They're not going to run all the missions, but they'll run a mission and describe what they've done, and they'll interact with that. So in the core values, it's possible to do some kind of activity with the kids, but I wouldn't necessarily count on that when that goes through. It's not something that's always done, depending on the judging and how that is. Make sure that they can communicate with them. Also in the morning, when you get there interspersed with your judging, you will have a practice round at the competition table. Generally, you're not allowed to actually practice at the competition table. You can only go through there when you do that. But when they go up there, they'll go into a queuing area, then be allowed in. Remember, only 2 people at the table at a time. Everybody else can be in the area, but they have to stand back out of the way. And they will be able to interact there and actually go through it. And the practice will be run just like an actual one, so they can get through. If you have questions about how you have, let's say there's something in how you're running your robot that you think might be a question, that's the time to get it answered, to talk to the referee saying, hey, we're doing this, we want to make sure this is okay. It's better to do that than have it caught and go, oh, that's not right in the middle of it. So interact with them. They'll work with you on that and make sure that you're going through in following that. Then once that's done, typically in the morning, then in the afternoon is when the actual competition rounds happen. Remember, you'll have three rounds, and you get the best score out of the three. So if everything goes crazy in one of them, you will be able, you'll still have two more to be able to do it. So it's a best of three. It's not cumulative, and sometimes things don't go well, and you can improve. And of course, you can work in the pits, in your pit table in between, and make adjustments to your program and modifications and that kind of thing. So we do the best to make sure the tables are accurate. When you go in, please make sure when you go into the competition table, make sure your team looks at that table and make sure everything is the way they think it should be. If there's a particular way that an object they think an object or playing piece should be for them to score, they should not change it, but they should ask the referee to correct it. As long as it's allowed by the referee will make sure it's there. They should never assume the referees and the table resetters will be resetting the tables, but they should never assume that they should have that right. Always take that ownership on themselves and make sure that they have everything that they need and they are working correctly and everything's working the way that you want them to be. All right, any questions on that? Let me jump back into here. So the objective of the presentation, the presentation is for the project. So the objective of the presentation is to describe your project and explain it in what you've done. So go back once again to the challenge guide, take a look at that and what's there, and make sure that you're communicating to them what you've done in your project, and make sure that also reference back to the rubrics, because that's what the judges are going to be using to evaluate your team as they go through there. So yeah, so when we talk about the presentation, that's the area where there's a specific presentation is when it deals with the project there. So just to be clarified on that. So somebody says they've not been able to get a hold of a challenge set. If you haven't been able to get a hold of a challenge set, I can tell you that first is sold out. We are way past the deadline on that. I don't have anything to do unless there's another team somewhere in your area, maybe a public team that's not it's in your local region, not the Adventist Robotics, who is done with it, who'd be willing to sell or give you their set. Other than that, at this point, you should have had yours ordered and delivered to you by now. So we can take that offline if you have some more questions about that. All right, any other questions? Any questions that you have as far as coaches go, things that have come up, things you're wanting to know, what is this? What does this mean? Where do we go from here? This is your chance to ask anything you want. All right. Have I had any issues saving and editing using Bluetooth? Yes. I would not recommend using Bluetooth. In fact, I believe I need to double check the rules. I need to double check the rules. I think generally you shouldn't be using Bluetooth to transfer. At the competition, you shouldn't be using it. I find the USB cable much more reliable than that. That being said, if you think you have a hardware issue with your brick and things don't work right, or if it locks up, of course, if it locks up on you, taking the battery out and putting it back in is the first thing to do. But if you think you have an actual something physically wrong with your brick, and sometimes there are problems with it, please reach out to LEGO Education and to their support. They are extremely helpful. Great group of people to work with, and they can help you with that. Sometimes it's a programming issue actually that can cause it to lock up. I know we are using Chromebooks, and we found that in Chromebooks not all the features are available. So there's on the PCs there's more features available for programming, But the other thing we found on the Chromebooks is sometimes it doesn't work if the name of the program is too long. I'm not quite sure what it is, but we've run into it. If they put a really long name in, it'll accept the name, but then when they go to run it, it doesn't run. Shorten the name, save it again, and it works just fine. Don't ask me I'm not really sure on the technical end of that, but we've just run into that. So definitely use the USB cable rather than Bluetooth. It's much more reliable for the communication. Bluetooth is a nice medium for communication. However, it is notoriously a little flaky on what it does. So just in general. All right, any other questions as we go through? All right, we will be having some additional, we'll announce them, we'll send out emails to you. We'll be having some additional conference calls as we go through. So if you have questions you'd like to have addressed, feel free to email me. If it's a bigger issue, it'll help us know. I try to address everything I can. Also, will help us know what to address on the next conference calls as we move forward. So just let us know. We want to try to help you as we get into this and help you be successful. I'll come back to one thing we've addressed in some of the other conference calls as well, and that is it's very common, especially for rookie coaches, to come and say, oh, I'm not ready. We're not ready. I'm not sure we're going to go to the competition because we're not ready. I will tell you that that is pretty much the way every team feels when they go in. Rookie or not, you will never be ready. It's like, oh, maybe I'll try next year. I'm not sure we're ready. One of the things that I want to say is that I can talk to you all day long about what it is like to be at the tournament. I can explain to you how the tournament goes, but until you really experience it for yourself, it doesn't always click. So the only way to get through your rookie year is to have a rookie year. Remember that as a coach, you are learning as much, if not more, than your kids are. I've been doing this a long time, and I continue to learn. We have a First Tech Challenge high school team here, and I can tell you that I learn every year as I go through it, as well as our First LEGO League teams. There's always things that's like, oh, wow, we could try that, and just different ways of coaching, different ways of working with the kids, and of course the dynamics of the kids change. So you will always be learning. There will never be a time when you feel like you've got it all together. That's part of engineering. It's part of the creative process. It's okay if the kids fail. It's not about winning. It's about what we learn along the way and the value of what we learn. So please remember that as you go through. If you feel like, oh, this is terrible, this is not working, we only have like 4 or 5 missions or maybe only 2 or 3 missions, that's okay. Come, go to the tournament, experience it, and have the kids, just encourage them about what they learn. And that is one of the core values, is what we learn is more important than what we win. So keep that in mind as you're going through. Just have courage. It's going to be a busy few weeks here until the end. Make sure that as a coach you have everything checked off. Make sure you're paying attention to the rubrics. Make sure you have your consent and release forms taken care of and other things. And you'll be getting communication, of course, directly from your tournament directors as time gets near about what to expect for that, or any particular additional information that they need as they get in there. They'll be communicating with you as well. All right, any final questions as we're about to wrap this up? Appreciate your time as we do this. Like I say, feel free to email me if we have questions. I'll do my best to get back to you as soon as I can. If I somehow miss your email, I get a lot of emails every day, so if I somehow miss it and you don't get an answer back from me, feel free to bug me and ask me again. I'm totally okay with that. Just let me know what you've got, and we'll do our best to address it and help you with that. I know I've had some teams email me, some coaches and email me about rules, questions about the robot game itself. I will do my best to point you to where the rules are. However, I am not the referee at your tournament. So keep in mind that the referees are going to go by the rule book. So the better you understand that rule book, the happier you'll all be. So, all right, with that, we're going to go ahead and end the call. Like I say, if you have any questions, feel free to give me an email, shoot me an email, and we will work with you to get your questions answered. Thank you so much. I know it's a lot of work, and I appreciate what each one of you does for your kids. It's very rewarding as you go through, and we're just looking. Please feel free to share the love, tell other people about what you're doing and how it's working, and encourage your colleagues and other schools in your community, in your conferences, to get involved in robotics. Thanks so much.